Emma's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She pressed them flat against the scarred wooden desk in front of her, but the trembling traveled up her arms, into her shoulders, settling somewhere deep in her chest where her heart was beating too fast. The fluorescent lights above hummed and flickered. The police station smelled like stale cigarettes and floor cleaner. It was 2 in the morning, and the officer behind the desk still hadn't looked up from his paperwork. She tried again. Her voice came out smaller than she intended. "I saw something. I need to report a crime." The officer's pen continued moving across the page. He was young, maybe mid-20s, with tired eyes and a uniform that looked slept in. When he finally glanced up, his expression was flat, unreadable. He gestured for her to sit. Emma had been standing for 20 minutes. She sat. The plastic chair was cold against the back of her legs. She was still wearing the sundress she'd put on that morning, a lifetime ago, when the biggest concern in her world was whether the air conditioning in her classroom would work. The dress was damp with sweat now. Her phone was clutched in her right hand, the screen dark, fingerprints smudged across the glass. 6 hours earlier, Emma Sullivan had been exactly where she wanted to be in life. 28 years old, 3 months into a 1-year teaching contract at Vientiane International School, finally living the adventure she'd dreamed about since university. The kind of life her friends back in Melbourne envied from behind their office desks. She taught English to bright-eyed Lao kids who called her Teacher Emma and drew her pictures of elephants and temples. Her apartment was small but clean, shared with 2 other expat teachers who didn't mind her habit of leaving coffee mugs everywhere. Every morning she woke to the sound of monks chanting from the Wat down the street. Every evening the Mekong River turned gold in the sunset. She video called her mom every Sunday. The connection was always terrible, but her mom's smile made it worth it. "How's my girl? Living her best life?" Emma would laugh and hold up her phone to show the view from her balcony, the palm trees and the motorbikes streaming past. The organized chaos that was Southeast Asian city life. "I'm good, Mum, really good." And she had been. Good. Content. Maybe even happy in that uncomplicated way you can be when you're far enough from home that your past feels like someone else's story. On Friday evening, Emma finished marking papers at the little riverside cafe she'd claimed as her own. The owner knew her order by heart. Iced coffee with condensed milk, no sugar. She'd sit at the same table under the same ceiling fan and watch the river traffic while red pen bled across her students' homework. Today you learn the difference between there, and there. Tomorrow you'll forget it again. The rhythm of teaching. The comfort of routine. She left the cafe just before 6, when the light was starting to soften and the heat was finally, mercifully, beginning to ease. Her apartment was a 30-minute walk, but she'd been meaning to try a shortcut through the old quarter. One of her roommates had mentioned it. Saves about 10 minutes, cuts through near the French colonial district. Emma had lived here long enough to feel confident in her sense of direction. She pulled up Google Maps on her phone, found the route, and started walking. The shortcut took her away from the tourist streets, away from the guest houses and the backpacker bars and the tuk-tuk drivers calling out their prices. These streets were quieter, narrower, lined with old buildings that had probably been beautiful once, before the stucco started crumbling and the shutters started hanging crooked. Small family-run shops were closing up for the night. An old woman swept the sidewalk in front of a noodle stand. A couple of stray dogs nosed through garbage bags. Normal, ordinary. The sounds of a city winding down. Emma put in her headphones. She'd been working through a podcast about unsolved mysteries, the kind of thing that made long walks go faster. The host's voice filled her ears, talking about a disappearance in rural England, about footprints that led nowhere and questions that had no answers. She wasn't paying attention to where she was walking, not really. Her feet knew the way. Left at the corner, straight for 2 blocks. Right at the street with the broken traffic light. She almost walked past the warehouse without noticing it. But something made her glance to the left. Movement, maybe. Or light spilling from an open door where there shouldn't have been light. She pulled out her left earbud. The podcast voice faded to background noise. Her steps slowed. The warehouse door was rolled halfway open. Not unusual. Lots of places in Vientiane kept their doors open in the evening, trying to catch a breeze. But there was something about the quality of the silence inside that felt wrong. Emma stopped walking. She was standing maybe 20 feet from the entrance, close enough to see but far enough that anyone inside wouldn't immediately notice her. 3 men stood in a loose circle around a 4th man who was on his knees. The kneeling man was small, thin, wearing a white shirt that glowed in the harsh overhead lights. His hands were behind his back. Died, Emma realized. His head was bowed, but she could see his face, contorted with fear, mouth moving rapidly, speaking, begging. The words were in Lao, rapid and desperate, and even though Emma couldn't understand them, she understood their meaning perfectly. Please, please don't, please. The three standing men were perfectly still. One of them was tall, well-dressed in the way that suggested money and authority. Dark pants, crisp white shirt, no tie. He stood with his weight on one leg, relaxed, like he was waiting for a bus. Another man was shorter, stockier, in casual clothes. The third held something in his right hand, something metal that caught the light. Emma's breath stopped in her throat. She should have turned around, should have walked away quickly, quietly, pretended she'd seen nothing. Every instinct screamed at her to move, but her body had locked in place, frozen in that animal way humans freeze when they witness something their brain can't quite process. The tall man said something, just 2 words, quiet and final. The kneeling man's begging became a wail. The tall man nodded once, just once. A small gesture, barely movement at all. The sound that came next was sharp and mechanical and unmistakable. Emma knew that sound from movies, from video games, from news footage. But hearing it in real life was different. It was louder and flatter and more real than anything she'd ever heard. The kneeling man's body jerked once and then crumpled forward like a puppet with its strings cut. Emma ran. She didn't think, didn't look back, didn't worry about noise or direction or anything except getting away. Her sandals slapped against the pavement. Her bag bounced against her hip. The podcast was still playing in her one ear. The host's calm voice discussing evidence and theories, completely disconnected from the horror she'd just witnessed. She yanked the other earbud out and let them dangle around her neck. Her lungs burned. When had she last run like this? Years ago. A lifetime ago. Her breath came in ragged gasps that sounded too loud in the quiet street. She turned corner after corner, not sure where she was going, just needing distance. Space. Safety. Finally, she stumbled out onto a main road. Traffic, motorbikes, tourists, normal life. She bent double, hands on her knees, trying to catch her breath. Trying to think. Her phone was still in her hand. She stared at it like it was a foreign object. Call someone. She needed to call someone. But who? Her roommates. What would she even say? The Australian embassy? Were they even open at 6 on a Friday evening? Her mum? No. God, no. She couldn't put that on her mum, couldn't make her worry from 10,000 kilometers away. The police. She needed to call the police. Except she didn't know the emergency number in Laos. Was it different from back home? She pulled up Google with shaking fingers. Emergency number Laos. Her phone loaded slowly. Too slowly. The search results were confusing. Different numbers for different services. Her vision was blurring. A tuk-tuk slowed beside her. The driver leaned out, concerned. You okay, lady? Emma looked at him. Kind eyes. Maybe 50. The kind of face that belonged to someone's father. She made a decision. Police station, she said. Her voice didn't sound like her own. Please. Police station, not now. The driver's expression shifted, serious now. He nodded and gestured for her to get in. Emma climbed into the back of the tuk-tuk, her legs weak. As they pulled into traffic, she kept turning around, checking behind them, convinced she would see the tall man from the warehouse following. But there was only the ordinary chaos of evening traffic, motorbikes weaving between cars, street vendors packing up their carts, the city carrying on, oblivious to what had just happened in that quiet warehouse. The police station was a squat concrete building with barred windows and a Lao flag hanging limp in the still air. The tuk-tuk driver wouldn't take her money. He just looked at her with those concerned father eyes and said, "Be careful, be safe." Then he drove away, and Emma was alone on the steps of a building she'd never wanted to enter. Inside, the fluorescent lights were too bright. The air conditioning was broken or non-existent. 2 officers sat behind a desk, both engrossed in their phones. Neither looked up when Emma walked in. She stood there for a long moment, feeling small and foreign and suddenly unsure. What was she doing here? What did she think was going to happen? But then she thought of the man on his knees, the white shirt, the begging, the way his body had crumpled. Someone needed to know. Someone needed to do something. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice sounded steady. "That was good. I need to report a crime." Now, 2 hours later, she was finally being taken seriously. Officer Vanzi spoke English well enough to understand her. He was young, earnest, writing everything down in careful handwriting. Where exactly was the warehouse? What time did this happen? How many men? What did they look like? Could she describe them? Emma answered every question, her voice gaining strength as she talked. She pulled up Google Maps on her phone, showed him the street, pinpointed the location as close as she could remember. Officer Vanzi nodded. "Wrote everything down. Then he excused himself and disappeared through a door behind the desk. Emma waited. The station was quiet except for the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic outside. Another officer walked past, glanced at her with mild curiosity, kept walking. The clock on the wall said 10:30, then 11, then midnight. Emma's adrenaline was fading, replaced by exhaustion and a creeping sense of unreality. Had she really seen what she thought she saw? In the artificial light of the police station, with hours of distance, it felt like something from a movie, too dramatic, too violent, but she could still hear that sound, sharp, final, unmistakable. Officer Vanzi returned at midnight. He wasn't alone. The man with him was maybe 40, maybe older, hard to tell. He wore civilian clothes, dark pants, and a button-down shirt, but carried himself with unmistakable authority. His face was pleasant, almost handsome, with the kind of easy smile that put people at ease. He walked straight to Emma and extended his hand. "I am Commander Satyavong," he said. His English was perfect, barely accented. "Thank you for coming forward. This is very brave of you." Emma shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm. She felt a wave of relief wash over her, finally. Someone who seemed competent, someone who seemed to care. "Officer Vanzi tells me you witnessed something very serious tonight," the commander continued. He pulled over a chair and sat across from Emma, leaning forward slightly, his expression concerned. "I need you to tell me everything, every detail you can remember. Take your time." So Emma told the story again. The shortcut, the open warehouse door, the three men and the man on his knees, the tall one who seemed to be in charge, the nod, the sound, the running. She told him everything she could remember, and Commander Satyavong listened with complete focus, asking questions here and there, clarifying details. "The tall man," he said. "Can you describe him more specifically? Height, age, any distinguishing features?" Emma closed her eyes, trying to bring the image back. Tall, maybe 6 feet, well-dressed, dark hair, maybe late 30s, early 40s. He carried himself like someone used to being in charge. "And you said he was the one who gave the order?" "Yes." He nodded, and then the other man, the one with the gun, he shot. Commander Satyavong's expression was grave. He leaned back in his chair, thinking. Then he smiled at Emma, that same warm, reassuring smile. "You did exactly the right thing coming here. This is very helpful. We will investigate immediately." He paused. "For your safety, I need your contact information, phone number, address, where you work, just in case we need to follow up or if there is any danger to you." Emma gave him everything, her phone number, her apartment address, the name of her school. It felt good to be taken seriously, to be protected. Commander Satyavong wrote it all down himself, in neat, precise handwriting. "I am going to have an officer drive you home," he said. "It is late, and after what you witnessed, you should not be alone on the streets. We will take care of this. You are safe now." Officer Bansi drove her home in a police pickup truck. He was quiet during the drive, focused on the road. Emma sat in the passenger seat, feeling the exhaustion finally catching up with her. Her body felt heavy, her eyes burned. When they pulled up outside her apartment building, she thanked Officer Bansi and climbed out. The apartment was dark. Her roommates were asleep. Emma let herself in quietly, locked the door behind her, and stood in the darkness of her room for a long moment. Then she walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside slightly. The police truck was still there, parked across the street, engine off. Officer Bansi sat in the driver's seat, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone, watching. Emma let the curtain fall. She sat on the edge of her bed, still fully dressed, her phone clutched in both hands. The exhaustion was gone. In its place was something else, something cold and sharp that settled in her stomach and refused to leave. She replayed the conversation with Commander Satyavong in her mind. His questions, the way he'd asked about the tall man. "Can you describe him? What did he look like? How clearly did you see his face? Would you recognize him again?" Those weren't the questions of someone trying to solve a murder. Those were the questions of someone trying to figure out exactly how much danger they were in, how much Emma could identify, how much she knew. Emma lay down on her bed without taking off her dress or turning off the light. She stared at the ceiling and listened to her heart beating too fast in the silence. Outside, the police truck remained. A guardian or a guard. Protection or surveillance. She didn't know which. And that was what terrified her most. She didn't sleep at all that night. She just lay there, phone in hand, replaying Commander Satyavong's smile and wondering what she'd just walked into. Wondering if doing the right thing had been the worst mistake of her life. The clock on her nightstand glowed green in the darkness. 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m. The police truck never moved, and Emma finally understood that she wasn't safe at all. She just told everything she knew to the wrong people, and now they knew exactly where to find her. The police truck was still there when the sun came up. Emma stood at her window, curtain pulled back just enough to see the street below. Officer Vanzi was gone, replaced by someone else, a different uniform, same vehicle, same position. The engine was off. The officer inside sat perfectly still, his face hidden behind sunglasses despite the early morning hour. Emma's roommate Sarah knocked on her door around 7. "You okay? You didn't come out for coffee?" Emma turned from the window. She hadn't changed out of yesterday's dress, hadn't showered, hadn't moved except to use the bathroom. "I'm fine, just tired." Sarah frowned. "You look terrible. Are you sick?" "No, just a rough night." Sarah lingered in the doorway, clearly wanting to ask more, but Emma turned back to the window and the moment passed. She heard Sarah's footsteps retreating down the hallway. The apartment door opened and closed. Sarah leaving for her morning run, the same route she took every Saturday, routine. Normalcy, things that belonged to a world Emma no longer felt part of. She forced herself to shower, to change clothes, to make coffee with shaking hands that spilled grounds across the counter. When she finally left for work at 8:30, her bag packed with Monday's lesson plans she hadn't finished, the police truck pulled away from the curb, not following her, just leaving, as if its job was done, as if the message had been sent and received. But 10 minutes into her walk, Emma spotted it again, parked on a side street, different position, same truck, or maybe a different truck, she couldn't tell. She kept walking, forcing her pace to stay normal, resisting the urge to look back. Her skin crawled with the sensation of being watched. At school, she went straight to James's classroom. James taught history, had been in Laos for 3 years, spoke decent Lao, and knew the city better than any other expat teacher. He was in his early 30s, British, with the kind of easygoing demeanor that made students and staff alike gravitate toward him. Emma trusted him. She closed his classroom door. James looked up from his desk, smiled, then saw her face, and the smile disappeared. "What's wrong?" Emma told him. "Everything. The warehouse, the murder. The police station, Commander Sutibong, the truck that had sat outside her apartment all night and was now following her." The words tumbled out in a rush, and halfway through she realized she was crying. James listened without interrupting. When she finished, his face had gone very pale. "Emma," he said quietly, "you need to be extremely careful. I went to the police. I did the right thing." James stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the schoolyard where early arriving students were playing football. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was measured, careful. In Laos, things don't always work the way they do back home. The systems we're used to, the protections we take for granted, they don't always apply here. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that sometimes the people in power are the same people involved in the crimes. And if you witnessed something you weren't supposed to see, and you went to the police, you might have just told the wrong people that you're a problem that needs to be solved." The words hung in the air between them. Emma felt something cold settle deeper into her chest. "You think the commander is involved?" "I don't know. But I know that foreigners who make waves here sometimes end up in very bad situations. False charges, deportation, or worse." He turned to face her. "My advice? Drop it. Forget what you saw. If they ask you more questions, tell them you were mistaken. Tell them it was dark and you're not sure what you saw. Then keep your head down and finish your contract. A man died, James. The first saw him murdered. I know, and that's terrible. But you can't save him. He's already dead. And if you keep pushing this, you might end up dead too, or in a Lao prison, which is arguably worse." James's eyes were kind but firm. "I'm sorry. I know that's not what you want to hear. But I've seen what happens to people who try to fight corruption here. They don't win. They just disappear." Emma left his classroom feeling worse than when she'd entered. She taught her morning classes on autopilot, her mind elsewhere, her students noticing her distraction but too polite to mention it. During lunch break, her phone rang. Unknown number. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Miss Sullivan?" Commander Suthivong's voice was warm, friendly. "I hope I am not disturbing you. I wanted to follow up on last night. We have some photographs I would like you to look at. Possible suspects. Can you come to the station this afternoon?" Emma's mouth was dry. "Yes, of course. What time? 3 o'clock? I'll be there." "Good. Thank you for your cooperation. This is very helpful to our investigation." He hung up. Emma stared at her phone. The call had lasted less than a minute, but she felt like she'd just agreed to something far more significant than looking at photographs. She thought about James's warning. Tell them you were mistaken. Tell them you're not sure. But the man's face flashed in her memory. The white shirt, the begging, the way his body had crumpled. She couldn't pretend she hadn't seen it, couldn't pretend it didn't matter. At 3 o'clock, Emma walked into the police station for the second time in less than 24 hours. Commander Sutivong was waiting for her in the lobby. He greeted her with that same warm smile, shook her hand, led her to a small interview room. Officer Vanzi was there, standing in the corner, not meeting her eyes. "Please, sit." Commander Sutivong gestured to a chair. He sat across from her, placing a folder on the table between them. "Before we look at these photos, I need to ask you a few routine questions. For our records, of course. Your visa status. You are here on a work visa, correct?" "Yes, through the school. And your work permit is current? All your documentation is in order?" Emma felt her stomach tighten. "Yes, everything is legal." "Why? Just routine. You understand we need to verify these things. Foreign nationals involved in criminal investigations, we have to be thorough." He smiled. "I am sure everything is fine. And your address, you have registered it properly with immigration?" "I think so. The school handled most of that." "You think so?" Commander Sutivong made a note on a pad of paper. "It would be unfortunate if there were irregularities. Immigration violations can be quite serious here. Deportation, defines, even detention." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Emma felt her throat tightening. "I'm sure everything is in order." "Good, good." The commander opened the folder and spread 6 photographs across the table. "These are men who have been involved in criminal activity in Vientiane. Take your time. Tell me if you recognize any of them." Emma looked at the photos. 6 men, all Lao, all roughly the same age range. None of them looked familiar. None of them were the tall man from the warehouse. She studied each face carefully, wanting to be sure. But there was nothing, no recognition, no connection. "I don't recognize any of them," she said. Commander Sutivong leaned back in his chair. He didn't look disappointed. If anything, he looked almost relieved. "Are you certain?" "Sometimes in the heat of the moment, in poor lighting, memories can be unclear. I'm certain. These aren't the men I saw." He gathered up the photographs and returned them to the folder. "Then we will continue our investigation. Thank you for your time, Miss Sullivan." He paused, his expression growing more serious. "I want you to understand something. Vientiane is generally a safe city, but there are dangerous elements. People involved in illegal business. Drugs, smuggling, worse things. These people do not like witnesses. They do not like problems." Emma felt her pulse quicken. "Are you saying I'm in danger?" "I am saying you should be careful. Stay home in the evenings. Do not walk alone in unfamiliar areas. Do not discuss this investigation with anyone, for your own safety." He stood, signaling the meeting was over. "We will contact you if we need anything else." Emma walked out of the police station into the afternoon heat and knew with absolute certainty that she had just been threatened, not openly, not in any way she could prove. But the message was clear. Drop this, be quiet, or face consequences. The next week was a slow descent into paranoia. The police truck appeared at random times, once outside the coffee shop where she had breakfast, once parked near the school gates during dismissal, once on her street at 2 in the morning when she couldn't sleep and looked out her window. They weren't hiding anymore. They wanted her to see them, wanted her to know she was being watched. Her phone rang at odd hours, middle of the night, early morning. When she answered, there was only silence, sometimes breathing, sometimes nothing at all. She stopped answering unknown numbers, stopped sleeping with her phone beside her bed. But the calls kept coming. On Wednesday, Emma came home from work to find her apartment door unlocked. She stood in the hallway, key in hand, staring at the handle. She was certain she'd locked it that morning, certain. She pushed the door open slowly, her heart hammering. Nothing looked disturbed at first glance. But as she walked through the apartment, she noticed small things. Her laptop had been moved. The drawer in her nightstand was slightly open. Her clothes in the closet had been shifted. Someone had been here. Someone had gone through her things. They hadn't taken anything. They didn't need to. The message was clear. "We can reach you anywhere. Nothing is safe." Emma told her roommates. Sarah and Michelle listened with growing alarm. "Should we call the police?" Michelle asked. The bitter laugh that escaped Emma's throat surprised even her. "The police are the ones doing this." That night, Sarah and Michelle sat her down at the kitchen table. Their faces were kind but firm. "Emma, we love you, but you need to drop this. Whatever you saw, whatever you think happened, it's not worth this. You're putting yourself in danger. You're putting us in danger just by living here. Michelle nodded. I have a friend who works at the Australian embassy. She's heard stories. Foreigners who cross the wrong people here. They end up in prison on drug charges. Or they disappear. Or they have accidents. She reached across the table and squeezed Emma's hand. Please, just let it go. Emma wanted to argue. Wanted to insist that justice mattered. That someone needed to stand up for the man who died. But looking at her roommates' frightened faces, she realized she'd already dragged them into her nightmare. By living here, by being associated with her, she'd made them targets too. The next morning, Emma called the Australian embassy. She was transferred 3 times before reaching someone in consular services. A woman named Patricia with a calm, professional voice listened to Emma's story without interrupting. When Emma finished, Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I understand, this is frightening, but without concrete evidence of a direct threat, there's limited action we can take. If you feel you're in immediate danger, we can help arrange your departure from Laos. But we cannot intervene in local police matters. Can't you contact the government, make an official complaint? We can make inquiries. But these things take time, and they don't always lead to results. My honest advice, if you feel unsafe, leave. We can help with that. But staying here and trying to fight this, especially if the police are involved, that's extremely risky. Emma thanked her and hung up. She sat on her bed, staring at her passport on the nightstand. Leave, run away. Abandon the man who died. Abandon any hope of justice. Save herself and forget everything else. She couldn't do it. Not yet. Late that night, Emma sat at her laptop with all the lights off in her room, the glow of the screen illuminating her face. She searched Commander Sutivong's name in Lao and English. The results were sparse. A few mentions in government press releases. A photo from a police ceremony. Nothing substantial. She tried adding different search terms. Corruption, investigation, scandal. Still nothing concrete. She found an expat forum and searched for his name there. One thread mentioned him obliquely, someone asking about police corruption in Vientiane. Another person responding, be careful who you talk to. Some of them are connected to powerful families. They're untouchable. No names mentioned, but the implication was clear. Emma kept digging, found references to foreign investment deals that had gone bad, construction projects that had ended in disputes, businessmen who had disappeared, nothing directly linked to the commander, but patterns emerging, hints, suggestions, enough to know that what she'd witnessed wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of something larger. She was so focused on her research that she didn't hear the knock on her door until it came again, louder. Emma's heart jumped. It was past midnight. She closed her laptop and walked to the door. Who is it? Silence. Then a voice, quiet and urgent. Miss Emma, please. It's Vanzi. Emma opened the door a crack, keeping the chain lock engaged. Officer Vanzi stood in the hallway, no longer in uniform. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, looking younger and more frightened than she'd ever seen him. He glanced over his shoulder, then back at her. Please, I need to talk to you. Emma hesitated, then unhooked the chain and let him in. Vanzi stepped inside quickly, and she closed the door behind him. He didn't sit, just stood in the middle of her small living room, hands shoved in his pockets, looking like he wanted to run. You need to stop, he said. No more questions. No more digging. The commander knows you've been researching him. He knows you've been asking questions. He is losing patience. How does he know what I've been doing? Vanzi didn't answer. He didn't need to. Of course they were monitoring her phone, her internet, maybe even her conversations. Emma felt her last illusion of privacy crumble. I'm trying to help you, Vanzi continued. His voice was pleading now. Just say you were wrong. Say you did not see clearly. Say you are sorry for wasting our time. Then forget everything. Live your life. Teach your students. Be safe. A man died, Emma said. Her voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. I saw him murdered. Were you there that night, in the warehouse? Vanzi's face went pale. He looked at the door, then back at her. His silence was answer enough. Who was he? The man who died. What was his name? I cannot tell you that. Vanzi moved toward the door. Please, Miss Emma, I am trying to save your life. Stop asking questions. Forget what you saw. That is the only way you survive this. He left as quickly as he'd come, pulling the door shut behind him. Emma stood alone in her dark apartment, her heart racing, and understood with perfect clarity that she was completely alone. The police were not going to help her. The embassy could not protect her. Her roommates wanted her to disappear, and the people who had killed that man knew exactly where she was and exactly how vulnerable she was. She needed help. Real help. Drill help. Someone who could expose this. Someone who could make enough noise that they couldn't simply make her disappear. Emma remembered something from the expat forum. A journalist named Claire Morrison, British, freelance, known for covering human rights abuses and corruption in Southeast Asia. Emma opened her laptop again, found an encrypted email service, created a new account, searched until she found Morrison's contact information on a journalism website. She wrote quickly, before she could change her mind. My name is Emma Sullivan. I witnessed a murder in Vientiane 1 week ago. I went to the police. I believe the police are involved. I believe my life is in danger. I can give you names, details, everything. Please help me. Please make people care. She hit send before she could reconsider, closed her laptop, sat in the darkness of her room and waited for dawn. What Emma didn't know was that Commander Sutivong had been monitoring her internet activity since the day she'd walked into the police station. He knew about the embassy call, the forum searches, the Wikipedia deep dives, and now he knew about the email to the journalist. He knew exactly what Emma was planning, and he had already begun preparing his response. In a quiet office across the city, Commander Sutivong read the transcript of Emma's email and allowed himself a small smile. The foreign teacher had just made the one mistake he'd been waiting for. She'd shown her hand, revealed her intentions, given him everything he needed to move from surveillance to action. He picked up his phone and made a call. It was time to finish this. Time to make Emma Sullivan understand that in Laos, there was no such thing as justice for those who crossed the wrong people. There was only survival, and she had just forfeited her chance at it. Claire Morrison responded to Emma's email within 6 hours. The message was brief and professional. I can meet you tomorrow afternoon, 2 o'clock. Chow Anuvong Park, near the Riverside Pavilion. Come alone. Don't tell anyone where you're going. Emma read the message 3 times, her hands trembling. This was it, her chance to make this matter, to make someone care. She deleted the email immediately and cleared her browser history, though she knew by now it probably didn't matter. They were watching. They already knew. She barely slept that night. Every sound in the hallway made her jump. Every car passing on the street below could have been them, coming for her, deciding she'd become too much trouble. By the time dawn broke, Emma had convinced herself a dozen times to back out, to delete her email account, to take Vanzi's advice and just forget everything. But then she would remember the man in the warehouse, the white shirt, the begging, the sound, and she knew she couldn't live with herself if she didn't at least try. Saturday morning arrived humid and overcast. Emma told her roommate she was going shopping, needed to clear her head. Sarah looked at her with concern but didn't push. Michelle was already out, meeting friends for brunch, normal Saturday activities, normal lives. Things Emma no longer had access to. She left her apartment at 1:30, allowing extra time to walk. The police truck wasn't visible on her street, but she knew that didn't mean anything. They could be watching from anywhere. She kept her phone in her bag, turned off, paranoid about GPS tracking. The walk to Chow Anuvong Park took 40 minutes. Her shirt was soaked with sweat by the time she arrived. The park stretched along the Mekong River, a popular spot for locals and tourists alike. On Saturday afternoon, it was crowded. Families, couples, street vendors selling coconuts and grilled meat, children running around the fountains. Emma moved through the crowd, scanning faces, looking for anyone who might be watching her. Everyone and no one looked suspicious. The Riverside Pavilion was near the water, an open-air structure with a view across to Thailand on the opposite bank. Emma spotted Claire Morrison immediately. She was exactly what Emma had imagined. Mid-40s, British, with short gray hair and the kind of weathered face that suggested years spent in difficult places. She wore lightweight cargo pants and a linen shirt, a camera bag slung over one shoulder. She was sitting on a bench, appearing to study the river, but her eyes tracked Emma's approach. Emma sat down beside her, keeping a few feet of distance. Claire didn't look at her directly. Her voice was quiet, barely audible over the sounds of the park. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. So Emma told her story one more time. The warehouse, the murder, the police station, Commander Sutivong, the surveillance, the threats, the break-in, Vanzi's midnight visit. All of it spilled out in a whispered rush while they both pretended to watch the river. Claire listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on her phone. When Emma finished, Claire was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do you have any proof? Photos? Documents? Anything physical?" "No. Just what I saw. What I remember." And you're certain about the commander's involvement? He's not investigating this. He's protecting whoever did it. Maybe he ordered it himself. I don't know. But I know he's not trying to solve a murder. He's trying to make sure no one knows it happened. Claire finally turned to look at Emma. Her eyes were kind, but also calculating, weighing risks and angles. I believe you. And I've heard things about Sut Thivong. Nothing concrete, but rumors. Connections to organized crime, corruption. He's from a powerful family, untouchable, as they say here. She paused. I can write this story. I have contacts at the Guardian, advice. I can make noise. But you need to understand what that means. Once I publish, you become a target, not just surveillance. Active measures. They'll want you silenced. I'm already a target. Emma's voice was stronger than she felt. At least if the story is public, if people know what's happening, maybe they can't just make me disappear. Maybe. Claire pulled out her phone and opened a voice recording app. I need you to go through everything again. On record this time. Names, dates, details. Everything you can remember about the commander, about that night, about the threats. Can you do that? Emma nodded. Claire hit record and Emma started talking. She spoke for 20 minutes, laying out every detail, every conversation, every moment of fear from the past week. Her voice caught several times, but she pushed through. This was it, her one chance to make someone listen. When she finished, Claire saved the recording and put her phone away. I need 2 days to verify some things, to reach out to sources. Then I'll publish. She looked at Emma seriously. In the meantime, you need to be careful. More careful than you've been. Stay in public places. Don't be alone if you can help it. And Emma, if they come for you, if they try to arrest you on false charges or detain you, contact me immediately. Contact the embassy. Make noise. Don't go quietly. They made plans to meet again Monday evening. Same park, different location. Claire would have a draft of the article ready. Emma would review it for accuracy. Then it would go live. International pressure. Media attention. Maybe enough to keep Emma safe. Maybe enough to force some kind of investigation. Emma left the part feeling something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. Fragile and desperate, but hope nonetheless. Someone believed her. Someone was going to help. She walked back toward her apartment, taking a different route, still watching for surveillance but feeling lighter. She didn't notice Officer Vancy in the crowd at the edge of the park, didn't see him speaking quietly into his phone, didn't know that Commander Sathavong was already mobilizing his response. That evening, Emma tried to act normal. She made dinner with her roommates, watched a movie, laughed at the funny parts. But her mind was elsewhere, counting down the hours until Monday. 2 more days. Just 48 hours and the story would be out. She could survive 48 hours. Sunday passed in agonizing slowness. Emma stayed in her apartment, claiming she wasn't feeling well. She checked her email every hour, looking for messages from Claire. But there was nothing. That was probably good. Probably safer. She tried to prepare lessons for the coming week. Tried to imagine a future where this was all behind her, where she could go back to being just a teacher in Laos with nothing more complicated to worry about than lesson plans and visa renewals. Monday morning, Emma woke to the sound of pounding on her door. She sat up in bed, disoriented, her heart already racing. Heavy fists on wood, loud voices shouting in Lao, more pounding. Sarah appeared in Emma's doorway, her face pale. Emma, what's happening? Before Emma could answer, the apartment door burst open, not broken in. Opened with a key. How did they have a key? 4 police officers flooded into the small apartment, Commander Sathivong behind them. He was no longer smiling. His face was cold, professional, all pretense of friendliness gone. Emma Sullivan, he said, we have a warrant to search this apartment. Stand aside. The officers moved past Emma into her room. They weren't searching. They were tearing. Pulling out drawers, dumping clothes from her closet, ripping her mattress off the bed frame. Sarah and Michelle stood frozen in the hallway, clutching each other, watching in horror. Emma's mouth was dry. What are you doing? What warrant? Commander Suthivong held up a piece of paper. We received information that you are involved in illegal drug activity, trafficking methamphetamine. The search took less than 5 minutes. One of the officers emerged from Emma's closet holding a small plastic bag filled with white powder. He showed it to the commander and said something in Lao. Commander Suthivong's expression didn't change. He looked at Emma with dead eyes. Emma Sullivan, you are under arrest for possession and trafficking of illegal narcotics. That's not mine. Emma heard the panic in her own voice. That's not mine. You planted it. I've never seen that before. You put it there. You have the right to remain silent. You will be taken to the station for processing. They put handcuffs on her, metal against her wrists, too tight, biting into her skin. Emma looked at her roommates, both crying now, and tried to speak, but nothing came out. This was it. This was how they silenced her. Not with violence, with the law, with the system itself. Drug trafficking in Laos, 10 years, 15 years. In a prison where the embassy couldn't reach her, where no one would hear her scream. They walked her out of the apartment building in handcuffs. Neighbors stared. Students from her school were on the street, seeing their teacher arrested, their faces confused and frightened. Emma kept her head down, tears streaming down her face, trying to process what was happening, trying to think of a way out, but there was no way out. They had her. At the police station, they put her in a small room, not an interview room, a cell, concrete walls, a metal bench, a drain in the floor. The door closed behind her with a sound like finality. Emma sat on the bench and cried, not quietly, not with dignity. She sobbed until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen and she had nothing left. Hours passed. No one came. No water, no food, no phone call. The rights she thought she had as a foreign national didn't seem to exist here. She was alone in the dark with nothing but her fear and the certain knowledge that she had lost. Finally, the door opened. Commander Sutivong entered, alone. He stood looking down at her, his expression neutral. Then he spoke, and his voice was calm, almost gentle. "Miss Sullivan, let me explain your situation to you. You are facing charges of drug trafficking. The evidence is clear. We found methamphetamine in your apartment. Your fingerprints are on the bag." He paused, letting that sink in. "Of course, we both know the drugs were not yours. But who will believe you? A foreign teacher with no connections against the Vientiane police, against evidence we have documented, against testimony we will provide." Emma stared at him through swollen eyes. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand reality. Drug trafficking in Laos carries a sentence of 10 to 15 years. You will serve that time in Phon Thong prison. I can arrange for a tour if you would like to see where you will be living. The conditions are, how do you say, not pleasant, no air conditioning, no privacy. Violence is common. The embassy cannot protect you once you are convicted. They can visit occasionally, bring you books, but they cannot get you out." Emma felt bile rising in her throat. "This can't be legal. Legal is what I say it is." Commander Sotivong sat down beside her on the bench. "But I am not an unreasonable man. I am offering you a choice. You can face trial, face prison, destroy your life. Or you can sign a statement saying you were mistaken about what you saw that night 1 week ago, that it was dark, that you were confused, that you apologize for wasting police resources and making false accusations. You will agree to leave Laos within 48 hours and never return. If you do this, the drug charges disappear. The evidence disappears. You go home to Australia. You live your life. You forget this ever happened. And if I refuse, then you go to prison for a very long time. And no one will care. No one will remember you. You will just be another foreign drug smuggler who thought the rules did not apply to her." He stood up. "I will give you 1 hour to decide. Think carefully, Miss Sullivan. Think about your mother back in Melbourne. Think about your future. Think about whether one dead man you did not know is worth destroying your entire life." He left. The door closed. Emma was alone again in the cell that smelled like bleach and fear. She thought about the man in the warehouse, the white shirt, the begging, the sound of his death. She thought about justice and truth and all the ideals she'd believed in. She thought about 15 years in a Lao prison, about never seeing her mom again, about dying in a cell thousands of miles from home for a man whose name she didn't even know. She thought about Claire Morrison and whether her article would ever be published, whether anyone would care, whether international pressure would mean anything against a system this corrupt, this powerful, this willing to destroy anyone who threatened it. Emma sat on that metal bench and faced the terrible truth that sometimes courage isn't enough. Sometimes doing the right thing just gets you killed or imprisoned or erased. Sometimes the bad guys win because they control the game and they've written all the rules and they have no intention of playing fair. An hour later, when Commander Sutivong returned, Emma signed the statement. Her hand shook so badly she could barely hold the pen. The words blurred through her tears. "I was mistaken. It was dark. I apologize. I was confused. Every word felt like a betrayal. Every sentence another piece of herself she was giving away. But she signed. Because she wanted to live. Because she wanted to see her mom again. Because she wasn't strong enough or brave enough to sacrifice 15 years of her life for a dead man she couldn't save. The drug charges were dropped within an hour. Her visa was revoked. She was given 48 hours to leave the country. Commander Suthavong personally drove her back to her apartment, where her roommates had packed her things. He waited in the truck while she gathered her bags, while she hugged Sarah and Michelle goodbye, while they all cried and said sorry and meant it. "Emma," Sarah whispered. "We called that journalist, Claire Morrison. We told her what happened. Maybe she can still write the story." Emma just nodded. She didn't have the heart to tell Sarah that it wouldn't matter, that without Emma willing to testify, without evidence, without anything but rumors and speculation, the story would die. Just like the man in the warehouse. Just like justice. Just like hope. 48 hours later, Emma Sullivan was on a flight to Bangkok, then Melbourne. She watched Vientiane disappear below her, the Mekong River winding through the city like a snake, and she felt nothing. Not relief, not sadness. Just the vast emptiness where her ideals used to be. Back in Melbourne, Emma moved into her mom's house. She couldn't face her own apartment, couldn't face independence or responsibility or any of the things that belonged to the person she used to be. Her mom asked what happened, and Emma told her a version of the truth. She'd seen something she shouldn't have. She tried to report it. It hadn't gone well. Her mom held her while she cried and didn't push for details. Emma started seeing a therapist. Dr. Chen was patient and kind and specialized in trauma. Emma told her everything over the course of weeks, months, the warehouse, thought in a murder, the commander, the surveillance, the arrest, the choice she'd made, the man she'd abandoned. "You didn't abandon him," Dr. Chen said gently. "He was already dead. You couldn't save him, but I could have gotten justice for him. I could have exposed what happened. At what cost?" Dr. Chen leaned forward. "Emma, you survived. That's not nothing. Sometimes survival is its own form of victory." But Emma didn't feel victorious. She felt like a coward, like someone who'd traded truth for safety and would spend the rest of her life wondering if she could have been braver, stronger, better. 3 months after returning to Melbourne, Emma saw a small article online, not in a major publication, in an independent news site that covered Southeast Asian affairs. The headline read, "Corruption Concerns in Laos Police Force, Raised by International Observers." The article mentioned Commander Suthavong by name, mentioned allegations of misconduct, connections to criminal enterprises, but the language was vague, carefully worded, and there was no mention of murder, no mention of Emma, no mention of the man in the warehouse. Emma found Claire Morrison's email and wrote to her, "Did you publish this?" Claire's response came a day later. "I tried. I really tried. But without you willing to testify, without evidence, I couldn't get it placed anywhere major. This was the best I could do. A small article that will be read by a few hundred people and forgotten by tomorrow. I'm sorry I couldn't do more. I'm sorry they won." Emma stared at the words on her screen. I'm sorry they won, because that was the truth, wasn't it? They had won, completely, thoroughly. The man in the warehouse was still dead, and no one knew his name. Commander Suthavong was still free and still powerful. And Emma was back in Australia, broken and afraid, and unable to even think about teaching again without having panic attacks. 6 months later, Emma saw another article. Commander Suthavong had been promoted. He was now head of a regional anti-corruption task force. The irony was so complete, it felt like mockery. The man who had threatened her, who had planted drugs in her apartment, who had covered up a murder, was now officially in charge of fighting corruption. The system protecting itself, the wolf guarding the henhouse, evil rewarded with power. Emma closed her laptop and walked to the beach. It was early morning. The sun just rising over the ocean. She'd been doing this lately. Walking alone with the sound of waves in her thoughts. Trying to make peace with what had happened. Trying to forgive herself for signing that statement. For running. For choosing her own life over justice. She thought about the man in the warehouse. Whoever he was. Whatever he'd done to end up on his knees in that building. She wondered if he had a family. A wife, children. Parents who were still waiting for him to come home. Did anyone even report him missing? Did anyone care? Or was he just another person who disappeared in a country where disappearances were common and questions were dangerous? Emma stood at the edge of the water and let the waves wash over her feet, cold, real. Grounding. She understood things now that she hadn't understood before. Understood that the world wasn't divided into good people and bad people. It was divided into people with power and people without it. And power made its own rules. Power protected power. Power punished anyone who threatened it. She understood that justice wasn't a universal principle. It was a luxury. Something that existed only in places where systems worked and institutions could be trusted, and witnesses were protected rather than silenced. In Laos, in that moment, justice was whatever Commander Sutibong said it was, and there was nothing Emma could do about it. She understood that courage without power was just vulnerability, that truth without proof was just noise, that doing the right thing sometimes just got you destroyed. Emma turned away from the ocean and started walking back toward her mom's house. She passed other early morning walkers, joggers, dog owners, normal people living normal lives. People who had never witnessed a murder, never been threatened by the police, never had to choose between truth and survival. Lucky people, innocent people, people Emma envied with an intensity that surprised her. She would never teach again. Never go back to Southeast Asia. Never trust easily or sleep soundly or believe that systems worked the way they were supposed to. She would carry the weight of that night for the rest of her life. The man in the white shirt, the sound, the choice she made, the justice she couldn't deliver. But she was alive. She was free. She was home. And some days that had to be enough, even if it never felt like it was. Emma never went to the police again, not in Australia, not anywhere, because she learned that night in Laos that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is tell the truth to the wrong people. And you never know who the wrong people are until it's too late, until they're standing in your apartment with planted evidence and a choice that isn't really a choice at all, until you're signing a statement that makes you a liar and them the heroes, until you understand that the world isn't fair and justice is just a story we tell ourselves to sleep at night. She learned that bearing witness means nothing if no one with power cares. That truth doesn't set you free, it just makes you a target. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is survive. Even if survival tastes like betrayal. Even if it means living with the knowledge that somewhere in Laos, a man died for reasons you'll never know, and his killer got promoted, and the system that was supposed to protect both of you did exactly what it was designed to do: protect itself, at any cost.